The New York State Department of Transportation presents the DOT POD.
And welcome into the DOT POD. I'm Josh Heller.
And I'm Anya Cardos.
And we are delighted to have you joining us. Well, today we're diving into how New York State's Department of Transportation is leading the charge when it comes to sustainability and sustainability initiatives, from reaching the objectives outlined under Governor Hochul's Executive Order 22 to innovative practices.
During today's episode, we are examining the essential steps being taken by the department to lead by example and how DOT is paving the way for a greener future. We're super excited to have Carolyn Ryan with us in the DOT POD studio today. She is the Assistant Commissioner for Sustainability and Chief Sustainability Officer for the New York State Department of Transportation. Welcome, Carolyn. So glad to have you with us.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
So we'll start things out kind of how we normally do. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, about your background, and kind of your journey through the DOT to end up where you are now.
Sure. So I started with DOT in '94 as a junior engineer. I graduated from Villanova University with an engineering degree in civil engineering. And after 5 years at a consulting firm, I joined DOT down in the Region 8 office. So I spent...
That's down in the Hudson Valley for those.
That's
wondering.
right.
Yep.
That's right. That's where I'm from. So it was going back home after working out of the area for 5 years. So I've worked in the region's highway design office, regional local projects office, and then when we started with our design build contracting, I was one of the design build project managers. And in 2018, I got an opportunity to come up to the main office and work for the commissioner and chief of staff at the time and be a special assistant working on a variety of different projects. So that's how I got up to the main office. And then in 2019, I started working on the Lake Ontario Resilience and Economic Development Initiative by then Governor Cuomo, which brought me and the commissioner out to Lake Ontario, helping those communities deal with the rising waters and the storm events there. I joined the governor's team to work on the Lake Ontario program in 2019. And then in March of 2020, COVID hit. So everyone was back working at home. And then in the fall of 2020, came back to DOT, still working on the READY program, but started working with Commissioner Dominguez again as a member of the Climate Action Council. So that's kind of where my trajectory started with DOT and brought me up to the main office working on climate things.
No, obviously it wasn't necessarily your background specifically, but working with that READY program and obviously, dealing with the effects of, you mentioned the rising waters in Lake Ontario, dealing with global warming and climate change. Did that kind of, prepare you in some ways or kind of get you interested in doing more as far as, the environment is concerned and sustainability is concerned?
Yeah, I think the work on the Lake Ontario program really showed how the state can support local communities with their resiliency and economic development efforts when their infrastructure is subject to environmental hazards. And I think we know that at DOT all too well with our response activities to natural weather events. And working with the commissioner as supporting the Transportation Advisory Panel for the Climate Action Council and working with all the state agencies and members of the Climate Action Council developing the state's Climate Act scoping plan really did give me the background and the experience with what the state is concerned about, what what our country is concerned about, and all over the world in terms of what we need to be considering now to support the future of where we want to be in our environment.
Carolyn, before we get into how DOT is positioning our department and New York State overall as leaders in sustainability, let's get to the baseline here. What does sustainability mean? And what does it mean for our department?
So I think that there are a variety of definitions of sustainability out there, and for us as an executive agency at DOT, the governor really defined that in her Executive Order 22, her Sustainability and Decarbonization Executive Order. So really, it's empowering agencies to consider how their actions impact the environment. And in today's times, we're thinking of all of the environmental impacts that we have traditionally, but we're very focused on how our choices, our energy choices, are impacting greenhouse gas emissions and what that is doing to the planet. So the focus areas within the definition of sustainability include our what we do to purchase when we purchase, how are we making sustainable procurement choices, how are we reducing greenhouse gas emissions from our use of energy and energy efficiency and conservation, reducing embodied carbon in the construction materials that we use, obviously are transitioning our fleet of vehicles to zero emission vehicles, reducing waste, reducing uses of toxic substances, considering water quality in our developments, considering habitat protection and biodiversity, and across the board, how are we impacting those in our state who have been historically disadvantaged? So that's how the governor's office defined and encompassed sustainability.
Now, we do use quite a bit of concrete on a lot of our projects. And you and I have talked about this in the past when I come to you for background information. And we talk a lot about from cradle to grave. How has this process shifted? What was it like, and what does it look like now?
So the Green New York Council, which was established under Executive Order 22, much more formal than it had been in the past, is an assembly of state agencies who are developing guidance for all of the agencies impacted by the governor's sustainability executive order. And one of the things that they did was develop embodied carbon guidance for all of us. And what we talk about today is collecting information in what is called an environmental product declaration about the products that we purchase for our construction projects, both building and highway infrastructure. And the materials that we consider are the big hitters, the heavy hitters, like you had identified. So asphalt, concrete, steel, and glass. And for DOT, we've started voluntarily collecting those environmental product declarations, and they liken that to like the nutrition label for a material. And we're looking to assess what are the emissions impacts from the production and manufacturing of that product. So right now we're looking at cradle to gate environmental product declarations, and what the Green New York Council is currently working on is looking at the entire life cycle of that material from the beginning of its life. When you pull the aggregate or whatever the product is out of the ground, and then you have it in your infrastructure project, and then what is its end of life use. So that is under development now, and it's really exciting. We've got a team with DOT staff participating, and what does that guidance look like, and how are we going to do that?
Yeah, and this even includes like just transporting this material, like that's additional greenhouse gases and emissions as well, just to cart this material around too.
That's right. Where are we sourcing our materials, and how long does it take to get them from that source to our project site? Absolutely.
When you're looking at this kind of stuff, I feel like, especially starting out, how important is just the gathering of information, the gathering of intel, just to know, even before you start making policy plans, even before you start making initiatives, just knowing what our baseline is, what we're doing already, and seeing where those areas are that can be worked. But just kind of procuring all that information has to be so crucial for just deciding what to do next and how best to act.
Absolutely. As part of the current executive order, the Sustainability Executive Order 22, and prior executive orders, agencies would report annually on our sustainability performance. And that information does allow us to have a baseline and see where we can make improvements. I think for DOT, that data collection process right now is a little ad hoc. So we're working on ways to document what are our systems of record, where this information is collected, so that we can compare our year over year information and have better data to make decisions. So absolutely.
Has that been difficult, just trying, because it's a massive agency, over 8,000 people plus contractors. You're dealing with hundreds and hundreds of projects, all different. We talk about this with other guests, but just the needs of, say the New York City region are so far different than the needs of, say, Region 6 out in Hornell or up in the North
Right.
Country. I mean, so what's needed and what's necessary is so different. It has to be a challenge to kind of find those processes, or create those processes, really, to get that reporting. And once you have kind of a system in place, okay, but just creating that system has to be quite a lift.
Well, DOT has a lot of systems of record that we use to capture the data that we need, especially for the construction process, right? We have a very robust system that helps us manage the construction administration of our projects. So we do have opportunities to leverage our existing systems of record to pull data that we need. But there are instances where we find that what we collect doesn't provide us with enough data. And there's where the opportunity lies, is how can we build this into our day-to-day processes so that when we do need to collect data, we have it available for us with integrity.
I do love, if you look at Executive Order 22, just kind of the name, the title of it, right? It literally is leading by example. And when you look at, and that's for all agencies, to follow. When you look at the state of New York, the state of New York is, if you add it all together, is the largest employer in the state. And so, how can you expect everyone else to, fall in line if you're not doing
if
that?
DOT isn't
DOT,
the
if
leader
any,
in this.
really any state agency doesn't, right? So if the state of New York isn't willing to do it themselves, why would others follow? So I think it's great just the way it's written, in that, look, we need to provide an example. We need to, be the start of this change, because if we don't do it, there's no way anybody else will. And it is an ask, it is a lift, and making sure that the agencies are the first ones to do it, I think is a great kind of precedent to set.
Absolutely. I think we all can appreciate that change is hard, right? And I think that taking opportunities where different agencies have expertise and identifying, what is that more sustainable product that will still perform in the way that we need it to perform? Because at the end of the day, if it doesn't work, then, no matter how sustainable is it, it's not going to be what you need. So definitely leveraging our expertise and partnering with our sister agencies to find those sustainable practices has been fantastic. And the benefit of the Green New York Council is to foster that sharing of best practices between agencies and authorities that are covered by the executive order, and sharing good ideas.
We as a community, and I mean in a large, high up view of what community means, we all have a role to play in this. You've been working on DOT's internal sustainability policies. Those are based on Executive Order 22 as well. This is really interesting to me. So this is basically coming up with ways that we as a department, the people who work here, can make a difference. And that includes simple things. Bottled water, stuff like that. What are you looking at right now?
So I want to start off by saying we already do a lot of procedures and practices that are incredibly sustainable and support the environment. I think what we're trying to do is create an overarching policy that affects all of the divisions within the agency, and just empower staff when you have an opportunity to take that opportunity to do something more sustainable, whether it's in buying a less toxic cleaning product, or looking for opportunities to use more energy efficient electrified highway assets, right? So just I feel like it really is it's setting the bar and then empowering people to think outside of the box to achieve it, right? I think, and then how do we capture those things that DOT is doing and take credit for them and celebrate them? Again, I don't think that we have far to go. I think we just need to capture a lot of what we do and just recognize it and think thoughtfully. I think I shared with you my own personal example. When you think about what you purchase and the environmental impact of getting it from wherever it's produced to your door, right? So you can consume it. And I live in a beautiful area of Dutchess County where we still have a lot of working farms. And for me, when any produce is in season, I feel like it's much more sustainable for me to walk if I can, or get to the local farm to buy that produce, rather than just going to the supermarket and buying something that has traveled a much longer distance to get to me. It's just thinking before I think you make a purchase and doing it in a sustainable way. And again, I think we've all tried things that haven't worked out, and that's just part of it, right? Is seeing what works and just being thoughtful.
You just mentioned how this has kind of shifted your thinking. How else has your role here, your work that you've done thus far, impacted your own life on a daily basis?
I think, for being in a new office that is that meets with all of the other divisions and offices, I think I've one of my takeaways is meeting people where they are in their work, and finding ways to celebrate what we do today and use their expertise to find the right path for DOT going forward.
One of the things you mentioned a few moments ago is the Green New York Council, and I want to talk about them, for a moment, because obviously working smarter is what we're trying to do. We're coming up with things. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. But we're not the only ones doing it, and having that kind of sounding board to be like, hey, what have you guys done in that situation that we can learn from, and vice versa, obviously, so that all this groundswell of work, some of it's already been done, and you don't have to do work that's already been done. You can take that. How helpful has it been? Well, first of all, tell us a little bit about the Green New York Council, and then just what that experience has been like. How helpful it has been, for you and for your team to be able to have a group of people to talk to about challenges, successes, and best practices.
Yeah, so the Green New York Council is led by members of OGS, the New York Power Authority, the New York State Electric Energy Research and Development Authority, DEC, and the Division of Budget. So a great team from those agencies really is the Green New York Council, and then members like DOT are make up the rest of the council, and the council has set up working groups on each of those themes within the executive order, from waste diversion and reduction to buying and operating green in our procurements. And it's through those working groups that, we develop, we understand maybe changes to state finance law or new regulations that DEC is promulgating, and we kind of work through them as a team. So having these subject specific working groups has really helped us really understand what the obligation is, develop guidance where guidance is necessary, and then learn from best practices at other agencies, and share our own.
Let's talk for a moment about the CLCPA, or we'll break it down specifically, the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, otherwise known as the CLCPA. And it was back in 2019 that it was signed. From your perspective, well, first tell us a little bit about what the CLCPA is, and what its goals are, and its lofty goals are, and how the agency and through Executive Order 22 is trying to help reach those goals, and then they're lofty goals, as well they should be, of where the future is going to be for the state as a whole, and for the country, for the nation, and hopefully for the world.
So I have the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, also called the Climate Act or CLCPA, was signed in 2019, and it set goals for the clean energy transition and decarbonization for New York State. And our decarbonization goals are to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions economy-wide by 40% by 2030 and 85% by 2050 from a baseline of 1990 levels. The Act established a council, which was to develop a scoping plan of strategies to achieve our clean energy and decarbonization goals. So that body, that council, developed a scoping plan with support from state agency staff, but really the council was made up by agency commissioners, subject matter experts, industry, education. So it was a broad cross-section of representation. And within the scoping plan, we have topic-specific sectors and strategies within those sectors to achieve these very robust decarbonization and clean energy goals. Within the Climate Act, there was a section called Section 7 that relates specifically to state agencies. And Section 7.1, there's three parts to Section 7, pretty much covers that lead by example obligation that agencies have that the governor further refined in her Executive Order 22. Section 7.2 compels each agency to consider their actions and decisions and how they will affect the state's ability to achieve our clean energy and decarbonization goals. And then Section 7.3, considering both Section 7.1 and 2, how are we supporting and not further disadvantaging disadvantaged communities. When in Section 7.1, where it talks about how agencies lead by example, and then that's further refined in Executive Order 22, to me, that's our how, right? How do we do what we do to deliver our mission? That's complying with Section 7.1 and the Executive Order 22. Section 7.2, when it comes to how are we considering greenhouse gas emissions and helping the state achieve the Climate Act's decarbonization goals, what are we doing? So to me, Section 7.2 is the what. So how do we impact the mode of travel that the people traveling in the state of New York take? And are there opportunities to decarbonize that mode or use a less carbon emitting mode of travel? So I think it's lead by example in how you do what you do. And then as the transportation experts of the state of New York, what are we doing to achieve the Climate Act's decarbonization goals for transportation specifically?
How do you accomplish some of these goals? As you said, we have so much diversity across New York State. We have a major city, a worldwide major city in our state. And we have the Adirondacks, and we have our, beyond that, we have other rural communities. We have municipalities that are large and small. How do you connect with these communities on this level to partner with them and ensure that they are getting the support they need in order to affect this kind of change?
I mean, that's a really great question. And I think that there was a lot of robust public engagement as part of the sharing of the draft Climate Act scoping plan. And through the programs that agencies and authorities have to support the transition. For example, the obligation to transition all public school buses to electric school buses. It's a very robust program at NYSERDA that is supporting that with both funding for and expertise for planning that transition, as well as support for the cost of that transition. And agencies like NYPA and DOT, DEC, and NYSERDA implementing programs to develop publicly accessible electric vehicle charging to foster and support the transition to zero emission vehicles for the residents of the state. But I think, what works in a rural community versus what works in an urban area are very different. I think that there are, while we have a goal for decarbonization of transportation, that's not a one-size-fits-all. I think that in our more densely populated areas, there are opportunities for modes other than a personal vehicle. And so we have to leverage those opportunities and make sure that those active transportation networks are connected to the places where people want to go from where they live, so that they can make those decisions when they make discretionary trips. And in rural areas, maybe that's not the best opportunity. Maybe there aren't a lot of places to walk to or bike to.
It's very difficult.
So maybe those are the areas where we need to focus on changing the energy source of those vehicles from, a fossil fuel to something less greenhouse gas emitting. So I think that, with all the tools in our toolbox, where does the right solution work in a given community to support their transportation needs? I think that it is not a one size fits all, and it is definitely making sure the communities are ready for the change and finding ways that they want to support the change for the way their communities are supporting their residents and the economy of the state of New York. I think, going back to the Lake Ontario and St. Lawrence River shoreline communities, those communities are very heavily invested in tourism. And, that program really focused on what's going to make your communities resilient and what's going to drive, economic development in your communities. And that was really focused on a lot of the summer boating tourism that is supported up there, as well as, how do we make sure that they can support the development in their communities with municipal sanitary sewer and water systems that support the health of the lake and the river. And I think that example of providing those communities with the support that they need to continue the work that they're doing through the Lake Ontario Resiliency and Economic Development Program is just one example of where, to your question, like, how do we support these communities? Well, we have to understand what the needs of the community are, and then, with the projects and the programs that we develop, support those community needs through those programs and projects.
Well, that's just going to about do it for us here from the DOT-POD. Carolyn, we cannot thank you enough for stopping by and chatting with us. It's clear that, you and I'm sure everyone else who's involved with this and the Green New York Council, it's not just, it's more than a job. It becomes a passion, and it has to, and it needs to. And that's clear from hearing you. So thank you so much for talking with us today. We really, truly appreciate it.
You're welcome. It was fun. Thanks, you.
Thanks, Carolyn. This was a blast. Thank you. It was really informative.
And thanks to everyone for tuning in, however you tune in to the DOT-POD. We're certainly glad to have you. You can reach on out. That is podcast@dot.ny.gov. Again, that's podcast@dot.ny.gov. So until next time, we'll be right here on the DOT-POD.